Hello, my name is Mark Adam. In this video, I want to talk about the observer self, what it is, why it's essential for inner work, and ways to cultivate it. As an example, have you ever been in a heated argument and you're angrily stating your opinion, and then all of a sudden you have a moment of seeing yourself in action, seeing that you've been, emotionally aroused and narrowly focused, and it's almost as if some space has opened up. You've It's almost like you've woken up a bit from a dream. You're no longer simply immersed in what you were feeling or what about to say, but you have a little bit more room. And with that room and that perspective, there's also some choice. Perhaps you're about to say something mean to the person across from you, but now you can kind of pause, take a breath, and you can reorientate yourself. And you can maybe do something differently. This is an example of the observer self, our ability to not just be in our experience, but be aware of our experience and have some choice around it. And we all like to think we're aware, self-aware, but often we are kind of habitual. We're kind of just moving along in our conditioned responses, in our feelings, in our stimulus. We're not really have that perspective. So cultivating this observer self, that ability to reflect, to think about our own thinking, to notice how our nervous system is being activated, noticing if our heart rate is pounding or where our emotions are at, that ability to be aware of ourselves in the midst of our life is cultivating an observer self. And with that, we develop more agency, more ability to change, to grow, to do things differently. So this is an important part of psychological work and also in spiritual traditions. In meditative traditions, they talk about cultivating the witness and practices of self-remembering. Without self-awareness, there's no real change. We need that kind of observation of ourselves to make different choices. And we can think about this in terms of, say, an addict. An addict, until they realize they're an addict, until they see the effects, see it clearly, the effects that their actions have on the people around them and on their own lives, there's no real change. There has to be that observation, that awareness for there to be growth. And this is true working with trauma or more extreme cases. If we think about, say, a war vet with PTSD, somebody who gets triggered, they hear fireworks and they're hiding in the closet thinking they're still under attack, there's no observer self present there. The amygdala has hijacked the nervous system and they're in a fight-flight response without any kind of neocortex self-reflective activity going on there. They're just simply immersed in their experience. And until there's that kind of space of seeing the activation, there's no possibility for change there. And in the therapeutic context, well, big feelings are welcome and are often part of the growth. We feel to heal. A good therapist or coach is always looking to see if somebody's becoming overwhelmed, if they're flooded, if they're no longer aware of having a feeling and an emotion, but are simply in it. In those moments, they're just reliving the past, much like the vet hiding in the closet. We want that space, that perspective, that knowing that we're having a feeling, knowing that we're experiencing it, because then there can be room to move and to have some understanding. And if somebody does get flooded, say in the session, somebody has old emotions, old fears, old trauma, old hurt come up, and it's become too much, it's become overwhelming, the therapist will often ask the person to step back, look around the room, say 5 things they see, say 4 things they feel, say things they hear. This is all ways of reestablishing the observer self, bringing somebody out of their overwhelm and over-identification to being in the present moment, aware of where they are. And we talk about building capacity, about developing a window of tolerance, because especially if somebody's dealing with processing experiences that were overwhelming when they happened, when those feelings can get activated, they can still be overwhelming. So we do work with that in a very clear way. You start by having the observer self in place, somebody's aware of where they are, and then you invite the feeling in, just to the level that you can still feel it and be aware that you're having that feeling, and then you can step back from it. So that's called titration, allowing yourself to feel intense feelings that you might need to process, just to the degree that you can still be present with it, and then you can kind of come back from it. That's pendulation, going back and forth into strong experiences and coming back to the observer self. In some ways, we can almost say that healing from trauma is largely about establishing an observer self that stays in place so that we're not swept up in our emotions, swept up into our memories and our old past experiences. So even for us who are not dealing with trauma, we still have moments where we get caught up. We're in traffic, and then we also have a little bit of mini road rage and we start driving erratically. Or as I started to do this, we're in a heated argument and we're caught up in our emotions, and maybe we'll say something that we later regret. Or even not so extreme, we go to watch a sunset at the beach, and instead of seeing the sunset, we're thinking about work. We're not really there. We're caught up in our own thinking. We're thinking about what we're going to have for dinner, or what we did earlier, or what conversation we had. We're not really in the moment. We're not aware of ourselves in that moment. We've kind of become too close to our experience, and we don't have that space and that perspective. And this happens all the time, especially in our modern day. We're a very distracted culture. A lot of us are on our phones. We're looking at, shorts and on Instagram, and it's a little bit like a trance. We're there, and all of a sudden we realize like 40 minutes has gone by, and we forgot to cook dinner. And even right now, while you're watching this video, there might be a little bit of a trance going on. So right now, as you're still watching this video and listening to it, take a moment to feel your body. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, or if you're standing, your feet on the floor. And as you're still watching, notice your breath. Notice where your body moves. You breathe mainly in your belly or your chest. Maybe notice if you're tensing. Maybe while you're watching, you're tensing your shoulders a bit. Just let them relax. Maybe you're bouncing your foot, or you're playing with a pen. Just notice what you're doing in your body while you're watching. And this is an example of the observer self, of double awareness. You can still be paying close attention to this video, but still be aware of yourself, aware of somebody watching the video. And we can do this double awareness, for instance, even while we're at work at a meeting. Instead of just being caught up in the facts and figures or what's going on, we can be aware of ourselves sitting there, watching it, and noticing our reactions. Perhaps somebody says something and we can notice that we're getting tense while they speak. And because we're aware of that, we have some choice. We can take some deep breaths. We can be more present. We can understand our feelings instead of just reacting to them. And so in our modern culture, one thing we do, we might not be like the vet, the trauma, get caught up in our emotions, but we're often involved in our self-talk. We're always thinking about the past, ruminating about the past, or thinking about the future. And this self-talk is something that can kind of hold our awareness in too closely, and we're not aware of our bodies or our surroundings. And this is talked a lot about in meditation. I remember my first meditation retreat. This is over 35 years ago. I went on a meditation retreat for 10 days, and I'd go to meditate, and I'd only be focused for like a few minutes, and then I'd just be thinking about what I didn't like about breakfast, or I'd be thinking about a movie I'd seen, or a book I'd read, or I'd be thinking about sex. Thought about sex a lot, and then after about 10 or 15 minutes, I'd be like, right, I'm in a meditation hall, and then I'd try to focus again, and then before I knew it, I'd be off thinking about something else, what I was going to do later, or some fantasy. And really, for that whole first retreat, I was just really absorbed in my self-talk. And until I'd done that meditation, I didn't know how much I lived within my daydreams, how much I lived within my minds. And what was interesting is at the end of the retreat, it was a silent retreat. We didn't talk for the time. At the end, I talked to my roommate, and he'd had all these experiences of energy moving in his body, of becoming all these emotions coming up and things. And I was surprised because for me, I'd actually not been aware of my body at all. I'd go to meditate, I'd try to focus on my breath, and then before I know it, I was just caught up in my thinking. I hadn't known how, in a way, dissociated I'd been. I hadn't been able to be aware in my body. My attention was a bit like an unused muscle. I'd never practiced it. I'd never used it. I'd never learned to direct my attention out of my thinking mind and into my body. But as I've worked with meditation, one thing I've noticed that's very interesting is you both become more sensitive to experience. You become more aware of subtler and subtler feelings in your body or your emotions, and you become more resilient, more able to deal with stronger emotions and still have a stable presence. And now for me, a lot of my inner work or inner healing or understanding has really come about by my ability to stay steady with my experience. Our minds are very slippery. We get like pushed and pulled in different directions. And psychologists talk about the startle response. If you all of a sudden hear a loud sound, you'll instantly orientate without even thinking or conscious control. And the startle response, I mean, it's a good survival instinct, but in lesser degrees, strong stimulus can capture our attention, or our strong thinking can capture our attention away from our body and our feelings. And we want that ability to, have our attention be in a little bit of more of our control and not just be, respond to stimulus. One way we've also noticed this is that we can have a difficulty staying with unpleasant feelings or memories. And that's often where the real inner work is. We have to look at, those parts of us that are uncomfortable. There's almost a tendency of the mind to like dart away from it. It's like you might be there and you feel some grief. Maybe some grief arises in you that's important for you to understand. But as soon as you feel it, instantly you start talking about work, or you pick up your phone and you distract. There's not that ability to stay with our experience. In meditation practice, they talk a lot about equanimity, about not being, repulsed away from experiences, from our feelings, to like go, oh, I don't want to feel that, and move away from it, and not being overly attracted to it, but being able to be a steady observer. Oh, I'm feeling that. Oh, I'm feeling an unpleasant feeling. And if you have the observer self in place, you can be with that feeling and not be shook up by it or overwhelmed by it. So meditation is one way to develop the observer self, but there are other ways that we can do just more in our day-to-day life. And one of them is just very simple. It's to note our feelings. So if we're angry, just even say to ourselves, I'm angry right now. And doing that actually creates some space. It's like the beginning thing when I was talking about being in an argument. Just saying to ourselves what we're feeling starts to create some space around it. And then it becomes a little bit more workable. And as we do that, we can also start to notice the body. So if we notice we're angry, we can notice how it is in our body. As our breath becomes shallow, is our muscles tense. And as we notice that, then we have a little bit of choice there. We can start to take calmer and slower breaths. We can relax our muscles. We can maybe pause before we say the next thing. And as we get even more with that, being able to be in our body with our experience, we might even discover something more about it. And another aspect of this noting, we could take it a step further. Instead of just saying, I'm angry, we can say, a part of me is angry right now. I'm noticing that a part of me is angry. And this might seem like a little bit, of a small step, but it creates a little bit more space. And now we can be in relationship with our feelings. And also, we can be more than just that one feeling. If we notice that a part of us is angry, we can also then not just be angry, we can be curious about that. We can even be compassionate to it. We can befriend our anger and understand it. And as we're with it, as a part of us, we might realize, oh, there's another part of us that's afraid, that actually we're angry because we're also afraid. The anger is protecting us from our fear. And so that noting of what our experience is and understanding it as a part of us, that it's not all of us. We're an observer self having an experience, creates some space and allows other things to be present. And sometimes with this noting aspect, especially if you're dealing with very strong emotions, say anxiety or anger, one thing you can do is scale your experience. So from a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious are you right now? And if you go 6, just that process of scaling your experience invokes the observer self. You're seeing your anxiety. You're not just caught up in it, but you're aware of it, and you can kind of compare it to other things, see where you are, and then also you can start to bring some self-regulation into it. And one of the main ways to cultivate the observer self is by working with the body. Often, as I said, our minds, we can be caught up in, thinking about the past or the future, but our bodies are always present now. Our sensations are in the moment. So being aware of the body is a way of staying present and not getting caught up in the past or the future. And also gives us more information. When we become aware of the body, we can be like, oh, what do I feel in my body? Oh, my heart's beating. I'm feeling tense. And you can start to understand, oh, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. And then you can be curious about that. You can be more understanding. And with that, to go back to that idea of regulation, when we're aware of our body and how we're reacting, maybe we notice our breath is shallow, we're getting overly stimulated. Once we're aware of that, we can start to regulate ourselves. And this is the whole aspect of centering, which is a part of embodiment practice and a way to be with our observer selves, notice our nervous system, how we're responding to life, and then having some choice in being able to, slow down our breath, bring ourselves back to calm. If you want to know more about centering, I have a video on that you can check out. The link's below. So being aware of our body, there's a lot of ways we can do this, but all embodiment practices help. Yoga, Tai Chi, dance. But we don't have to do anything that formal either. Even just when we go for a walk, instead of just listening to our Walkman or music, we can be, really feel our body, feel our feet on the floor as we're walking, feel our feet on the ground, feel the temperature of the air on our skin. All these practices of being aware in our body while we're aware of the world around us or aware of the conversation we're having all help build the observer self. It's like it broadens our spectrum of awareness. And there are other ways to do this. Like I do suggest meditating for people, but a lot of people aren't attracted to meditation or don't have time in their life. But even taking a pause in our day. So in the middle of the day, especially if we're working at a computer, once an hour, take a breath, lean back, take a few deep breaths, check in with the body. How am I feeling? And it might be as simple as, oh, I'm hungry right now, or oh, my shoulders are tense, and relaxing that. Any time we reflect, bring our awareness into our body, it helps to bring that self-awareness more and more alive. And there are also more direct practices. I'm quite involved in focusing. It's one of the things I've been trained in and I work with other people. But focusing is a process of tuning into the felt sense, a way of kind of directing our attention into our body and then covering the feelings and the movement inside there that gives more meaning to our life as opposed to just our analytical mind. If you're interested in the focusing, which I highly recommend reading books by Eugene Gendlin. I also have a video on that you can check out. And so another way is to go along is just that sometimes working with another person is important, especially if we're dealing with emotions that are strong or we're dealing with situations where we have habitual patterns that we're not finding a way to change or we're feeling stuck. Working with somebody else can bring more awareness or help to get that observation of how we are. And that's a lot of the work with embodiment coaching is helping people become aware of their traits, their habitual responses, the way they normally act in situations. By bringing more awareness to that, it opens up the possibility for there to be growth and change. So if you're interested in working one-on-one, I do coaching. I work with parts work and focusing and embodiment practices. So I just want to say that, developing observer self, becoming self-aware, it's a lifelong practice that grows and grows and grows. And we all lose ourselves from time to time. We get caught up in the moment. The more we work with our observing practice, we come out of it quicker. We become aware of ourselves more often. So if we get in an argument, we become aware more quickly how we've been immersed in it. We have more space in our life to make changes. And so it's a skill. It's something to practice, something that develops the more we work with it, the more we work with being aware of our feelings, noting our feelings, noticing how our activation in our nervous system, noticing our body, our sensations, being in the moment. This is all something that develops over time. I just want to end by saying that, awareness and consciousness really is a mystery. There's no understanding of what it is. It's the mystery of being alive. And it's the cornerstone of not only change and growth, but just the richness of enjoying our lives. So the more we work at developing the observer self, being attentive in a greater way to our experience helps us. And so I just want to thank you for watching this video. I hope it's helped in giving you a few ideas to think about and to work on. And if it has, please hit like or subscribe or comment. That helps this channel grow. And I enjoy reading comments. All right. Thank you.